waiting to go live here. I know Siaf with I got chills as she was singing. It was just so beautiful. And mother son duo, beautiful. All right. Hello, YouTube. All right. We good with YouTube now. Oh, let me mute myself on YouTube. Hello, YouTubers. We just bringing y'all in. We've been inspired and had a little humor in the beginning of this, but couldn't show it on YouTube. So if you weren't in our Zoom, you probably missed that. So for the YouTube folks, if I reference this video, you'll know why. It's a video. If you go here on YouTube and you type Sam Adams True Color, you'll see a comedy bit, a 3 to 5 minute comedy bit that we watched in the beginning of this. And we also watched the mother son duo singing Rise Up. And then we went live on YouTube so we can have a little chat, have a little journey together. And I don't know if everybody's in. It's possible that everybody's on Zoom already and not on YouTube, which is totally fine. So I'll just go into what I want to share today. So what I said in my email that inspired this live stream was that I heard from a lot of you this week, and we're all kind of going through these difficult times here. And a lot of you had written to me with different things. Some of you were asking, geez, how do you stay positive in the midst of all of this? And some of you were really just asking how I was doing. And I don't know that I have felt such deep emotions about something that has been in the news since 9/11. Because I don't watch the news. And a lot of what has happened in the news I missed because I didn't watch it. And I didn't watch this news either, which is really interesting for how powerfully it has impacted me. I haven't watched the news accounts of anything. I wouldn't dare because it's already such a powerful impact, emotional impact on me. My son went to work last week, Monday, I think it was, last week, Monday. And he came home and he said, oh, they're protesting downtown. And I'm in Atlanta, Georgia, y'all. Home of the civil rights movement. And he came home and he said they're protesting downtown. And me, totally oblivious, haven't watched the news, no clue what's going on. I go, well, what? Who's protesting? What now? Downtown in my city, north of Atlanta, there is a Confederate building that has a sign out front ever since the 12 years I've lived here. And the sign says, White History Year. I don't know if the sign is still up, but they were protesting out there. I didn't see the protest or anything, but I had no clue why people were protesting. And my son said, you didn't watch the news? And I was like, no, I never watched the news. Care to fill me in? And so he told me what was going on, and that's how I knew. And he didn't share a whole lot of detail as to what was going on. So when he told me a cop killed a guy, I said, whoa, how did that happen? And he told me, and I literally got completely silent, tissue on hand. I got completely silent, and I walked out. I walked out of my deck, and I just collapsed in tears. And what I want to say is, it's fine to feel what we're feeling. It's totally fine. And every day this week, I cried. And it was very unexpected for me because, again, I haven't watched the news. I haven't watched any of it. I can't imagine people sitting in front of the news account of what happened to George Floyd and watching that over and over. I cannot imagine what that would do to you. I haven't watched any of it, and I've cried every day. And just the thought of it and talking about it makes me emotional. And I haven't watched the news. I just cannot imagine sitting in front of the TV, watching this entire thing play out over and over and over. I just cannot imagine what that does to a person. And when you hear my story, it's even more surprising that I'm having the reaction that I did. And a lot of what I experienced was, remember when COVID-19 hit and there was this mass consciousness of fear and, well, everybody's gonna die, you know? A lot of what I felt was the mass consciousness of pain and sorrow. And I also felt the uprising of compassion, because have you all seen how, I mean, the whole world is offering compassion around this, right? And when I play the next clip for you, um, that'll be underscored very, very heavily. But it has hit me so much. Um, so I was out on my deck and I was just bawling my eyes out. And then on Tuesday, I got up to work out. I'm back in my workout routine, trying to lose this extra pounds that I've been having. But was working out, and I'm just doing my normal cardio stuff. And I work out with Melissa Bender here on YouTube, following her 6-week program right now, all free, which I love. But was working out with her, and she said the word breathe, and I fell apart. On Wednesday, same thing. I'm back into my bodybuilding. I had two 30-pound weights in my hand, about to do my deadlifts and my squats. And the video that I watched, the guy said, breathe. And I dropped the weights. I felt like every ounce of energy drained out of my body. And I literally collapsed on the floor and just started bawling. In that moment, I felt the collective pain. I knew that it wasn't my pain and sorrow that I was feeling. That felt very clear to me in that particular moment, that it wasn't my pain I was feeling, it was just a collective outcry. And then I was like, shoot, am I getting like PTSD on the word breathe? Like the minute I hear breathe, I'm like, oh, totally collapsed. On Thursday, I was like, okay, so I am connecting with the story, which is fine. Feeling the pain, which is fine. Feeling the frustration. I felt frustration in the strangest of ways. And again, you're hearing from somebody who has not watched the news. Okay. So imagine what other people are feeling that did watch the news. I haven't watched any of it. My frustration came out in the strangest of ways. I normally watch a lot of cooking videos here on YouTube. And I remember on Wednesday, after collapsing with my weights and just bawling my eyes out on the floor, I logged into YouTube, and one of my favorite channels, cooking channels, uploaded a video, recipe video on making bang bang chicken. And I remember noticing the new upload, and literally my response was, fucking bang bang chicken? That's what you're gonna upload right now? Who's uploading videos right now? Damn it. I was literally screaming at my iPhone, like, who the fuck is uploading videos right now? I'm cooking. Who the hell cares about cooking? I was so mad. I was like, and my anger was just, and my frustration just came out in the strangest of ways. I remember just sitting out on my deck, and one of my sons mentioned that they didn't arrest the cop right away. And I was like, shh, what the fuck? You want to have somebody on the streets who killed somebody? I was like, really? I felt the rage. I haven't watched the news. Imagine the people who watch the news. Imagine the people who have felt this every single day of their lives. Today, I was like, realizing, and when you hear my story, you'll see why it's so different and why I'm surprised by my own reaction. But the thought I had this morning was like, human beings are so retaliatory. We just are naturally that way. And I'm not talking about just racism and discrimination and all of that, but in our natural human lives, when somebody gets on our nerves, we want to lash out. You know what I mean? With the in laws, it's interesting because in my conversation with Spirit, whenever we go, why is this happening? Or what can we do to solve this thing outside of ourselves? Constantly, Spirit says, go inward. And the reminder from Spirit is just really, you look at everything that's happening outside of yourselves, but everything that's happening outside of yourselves is a reflection of what's happening in your homes, in your communities. There is retaliation between a daughter-in-law and a mother-in-law. There's retaliation between a brother and a sister. There's retaliation between a husband and a wife. There's strong, heavy conflict between siblings. There's heavy conflict between family members. And every time I have a conversation with Spirit about that, we're always getting pointed back to what's happening in your homes. Are you in harmony and unity with all of your family members? And if not, examine that. Take a look at that. Because everyone's looking outside, no one's looking inside, right? And that's always been a heavy reminder from Spirit. On a Thursday of this week, I was like, okay, so I'm feeling a lot from what happened, right? I'm identifying with the circumstances of what happened. And on Thursday, it's like, what if I connected with the soul that played the role rather than the circumstances? And anyone can do this. I just kind of sat on my bed and I set the intention. I was like, I just want to connect with the beautiful, eternal, indestructible soul that played the role of George Floyd. And once you are tuned in and you just are used to connecting with, like, I'm used to sitting on my bed and talking to my dead relatives, right? So this is not anything new for me. So I did that, and I just calmed myself down, quieted myself, and I was like, okay. And those of you who are in conversation with Spirit, I just went into, the eternal state and really just connected with the soul. And the beauty of the message that came through was just extraordinary. And I'm not going to share that here. Anyone can do that. People make that to be a big thing. It's not a big thing. A soul is a soul is a soul. A spirit is a spirit is a spirit. You connect with one spirit, you can connect with any spirit. It's not a big deal for me. But it was just a interesting journey, to hear. And I'm going to play a video in a second from Conversations with God, because it speaks so beautifully to where we all can be in all of this occurring. But I will say that I'm still experiencing a lot of what's happening here, the feeling the pain. And I can't say that I'm done. I guess I could claim that I'm done and choose to not feel it anymore. But it's interesting. I felt perfectly fine allowing myself to feel the pain. I know that I can choose to not feel the pain. I know that in any given moment I feel it, I can transcend it very, very easily. But I've chosen to let myself feel it. Don't know why. I just have chosen to let myself feel whatever comes up. And before we went live on YouTube, we were watching the mother and son sing Rise Up. And I recently, a month ago, my joy for singing had moved me into the direction of singing with people all over the world using an app. And I've been enjoying that massively. And I, last night, was going to sing Rise Up with someone. And I got to the part where she sings, and the silence isn't quiet, and it feels like you're getting hard to breathe. And the minute I uttered that line, collapsed. Totally collapsed. I couldn't finish the song. I was like, I'm not ready. Not ready to go there yet. And I couldn't finish singing the song. So there's still a lot of emotion that I'm feeling about this, which really blindsided me. And when you hear my story, you'll understand why. But before I go there, let me see some of your comments. Before I go there, I'll share another clip from Conversations with God. But let me just read some of your comments here. Whew. GA saying it's hard for the soul. Found out 2 days after George died. Yeah, I cried too. Yep. Mm-hmm. Hard to watch. GA saying she was laughing out loud about the Food Channel rant. I know. I was like, why am I getting too mad? I love this channel. I love the uploads. I'm like, why are you uploading Bang Bang freaking shrimp? Who the hell cares about Bang Bang shrimp right now? And I was literally yelling at anybody that uploaded anything that had to do with anything other than George Floyd. I was like really mad. I was like, how could you upload this? Who the hell cares about this right now? But I moved through the frustration, and my frustration and my pain and the pain and desire that I feel comes in waves. It's kind of like, when somebody really close to you passes and you're going through the grieving process, and you could be like cooking or doing something and you're just fine. And then a wave of sorrow just hit you out of nowhere. That's kind of how I've been experiencing it. Like, I don't see it coming. Like the moment before, I'm not like thinking about the news thing. You know what I mean? I'm not thinking about it. I'm not like actively thinking about this every single day. Then again, how could you not? But it's just like out of the blue, this wave would hit me. And I just can't help but collapse in tears, But we're all going to move through it because it is part of the evolution. Jay is saying I have to disconnect when I go to work mentally. Yeah, and it's interesting that I'm having such a strong emotional reaction to all of this because I don't watch the news, and I'm not watching what's going on. Like, I'm literally not watching what's going on, and I'm still having this wave of sadness and sorrow and all that hit. But let's go to the Conversations with God video clip here. One moment. I'll have to share screen.
I guess our human society is just not ready on a grand scale to grapple with metaphysics, to deal with what some have called alchemy, or to rigorously apply what so many have called the power of positive thinking. Some individuals have done it, and some spiritual groups, relatively small as a proportion of the whole of humanity, have done it. But I'm seeing what you're saying now. As a civilization, we have not come anywhere near harnessing the power of metaphysics.
No, the human race has not. It is, however, becoming more and more aware of it, and is moving step by step in that direction.
Yes, there was a movie and a book out a few years ago called The Secret, which talked all about the power that lies within us to create our own reality. And as an illustration of this, the movie showed a man finding a car the car of his dreams, actually, in the driveway. Or a woman suddenly noticing a diamond necklace adorning her bodice. Even a 9-year-old boy rejoicing over the shiny new bicycle just outside the back door. But I can see that these are just first baby steps. I couldn't help but wonder, if the secret was so powerful, why wasn't it being used to create, say, world peace? This idea wasn't even mentioned in the movie as a possible application, pretty much letting us know where the members of our species place world peace on the scale of importance vis-a-vis new cars, diamond necklaces, and shiny new bikes, or at least where the movie's producers assumed we placed it.
You could, of course, create world peace using basic metaphysics.
Yes, my wonderful friend John Hagelin has traveled the globe making that exact point. He's a renowned quantum physicist. He's a scientist and a public policy expert, educator, and author. And Dr. John Hagelin offers us this from his online writings. I'm going to quote his writings right now. Most people, he says, most people don't know how deeply their own consciousness is connected to the collective fate of the planet, or how they can use a powerful, scientifically tested technology of consciousness to help create world peace on Earth virtually overnight. More than 50 demonstration projects and 23 studies published in leading peer-reviewed journals have shown that this new consciousness-based approach to world peace neutralizes the ethnic, political, and religious tensions in society that give rise to crime, violence, terrorism, and war. The approach has been tested on the local, state, national, and international levels, and it's worked every time, resulting in highly significant drops in negative social trends and improvement in positive trends. Large groups of peace-creating experts practicing these technologies of consciousness together dive deep within themselves to the most fundamental levels of mind and matter, which physics calls the unified field. From that level of life, they create a tidal wave of harmony and coherence that can permanently alter society for the better, as the research confirms. And this consciousness-based approach is holistic, easy to implement, non-invasive, and cost-effective. That's the end of the quote from Dr. Hagelin's website. You can go to that website, by the way, at www.permanentpeace.org. www.permanentpeace.org if you want more information. So the question is, what would it take for us to use this, can I call it, spiritual technology?
What do you think?
Nothing more than an awakening. Even just a beginning awareness of these things could get things started on a larger scale. I was struck by one of the video programs that John Hagelin made about all of this, which ends with this quote: "There's far more evidence that group meditation can turn off war like a light switch than there is evidence that aspirin reduces headache pain."
There you have it. Tell everyone you know, and have them tell everyone they know. Metaphysics works. It's the linchpin of the universe, and highly evolved beings know this.
Okay, thank you. That completes the overview of that list, and I found it very, very, very instructive. I do think, as I said, that our exploration of item number 10, however, and the observation about death there, does deserve some further expansion.
Item 10 again.
Thank you.
An awakened species would never, under any circumstances, terminate the current physical expression of another sentient being unless asked directly by that other being to do so. Humans in an unawakened state often kill other humans without that other human requesting them to.
And this is not a subject I feel we can go over lightly. And I understand now how, if we can much better use the power of metaphysics to deal with illness and other events, this could have a relationship to my own death. But were you telling me that if I'm murdered or killed in an accident by a reckless driver, whatever, that I've died because I chose to? Why would any soul choose to die?
The answer is as varied as there are souls in the universe. But you can be assured that each death serves the purpose of every soul in that moment, or it would not occur.
What about those of us left behind, mourning the lost? Did they take that into account?
They surely did. They have taken everything into account. And they do their very best to ease your pain of loss by helping you understand and experience that they have actually not died, but simply celebrated their continuation day.
What do you mean, experience? We can experience that they're still alive?
Many people already know what I mean. If anyone close has celebrated their continuation day, vast anecdotal evidence reveals that those who have passed on have found ways to make it clear to their surviving loved ones that they are still alive.
Gosh, this dialogue is getting more and more out there.
Actually, it's getting more and more in there. It's moving more and more into what you already know, deep within, but just may not have been able to fully or openly embrace, given the current cultural story of your very young species.
Putting this all together, then, I guess it wouldn't matter if aliens from other planets attacked us. If we didn't choose to die, we wouldn't and couldn't.
No. you would create a manner and a means by which that would not be possible, such as, for instance, something or someone intervening.
Ah, I see. The intervention of highly evolved beings from another dimension, for instance.
For instance. And this energy signature of what the soul chooses, or what you would call the superconscious will, works for you individually as well. If, as an individual, you have not chosen at a superconscious level to leave your physical form, you will not, even in the most treacherous or life-threatening circumstances. You may have what others will call a near miss, or a miraculous recovery, or an incredible escape, but you will not die. The collective superconscious will, that is, the demonstrated will of everyone in the collective, is the single and only influence affecting the embodying or disembodying of the collective, and the individual superconscious will is the single and only influence affecting the embodying or disembodying of individuals. This is how the energy of life works. It is the demonstrated collective superconscious will that it does not choose for the collective to be annihilated en masse or destroyed as a civilization.
I hate to argue with you here, but whole groups of people have died on this planet, and it's happened more than once. Are you saying that it's perfectly okay that this has happened because everyone in those groups wanted to die?
I am not saying that it is okay that it happened the way or at the time that it did. The choice to experience any event as okay or not okay is a choice for every person who is affected in any way by any event to make. I will never tell a person that their choice is right or wrong. Their choice is their choice, and it is not for me to judge.
You don't judge anything, actually, do you?
No. I know that in human terms there may be many things that would understandably be defined by humans as not okay, and to call them anything else might even be considered unhealthy and cruel within the context of normal and appropriate human behavior. It is by this device that you establish the fundamental values of your civilization, even if you do not all live by them. But I don't make these assessments or evaluations because to do so would be to rob you of your freedom to create your own reality. What I'm saying here is that no human being's experience of what your species calls death can occur in violation of that person's individual superconscious will. And no civilization's experience of what your species calls total destruction can occur in violation of that civilization's collective superconscious will.
You've made this point now repeatedly, but again, not to be argumentative, but doesn't saying such a thing give permission, in a sense, to those who would go on a rampage and kill others individually, or God help us, en masse, to serve their own twisted purpose?
No. It gives comfort to those who would see others as having been victimized in such a situation. It allows those who have been left behind to find the peace of healing, knowing that their loved one is celebrating their continuation day and has done so with full awareness of the choice they have made, and even with full understanding and compassion for those who collaborated in creating the event that produced their departure. As well, it may even actually stop someone who may feel no guilt about planning such a rampage and then becomes aware of the information here, because it could rob the potential perpetrator of the satisfaction of doing what they think is damaging to another, dissolving much of what might have been their motivation.
I would never have thought of that.
And there is this. Persons who would go ahead and kill others anyway, individually or in a group, do not seek or need permission from something or someone outside of themselves to do so. They will have justified their actions on a basis entirely different from anything said here.
Yes, but what if what they hear here could help them feel okay about it?
They already feel okay about it, or they wouldn't do it.
You know, I can see how what's been said here might not fit into the overall understanding of many. I mean, what's been laid out here may very well not mesh for the majority of people.
So long as anyone experiences reality as a victim-villain scenario, it will not. But there are no victims and no villains in the world, or anywhere in the universe. There are only sentient beings physically and metaphysically evolving and helping each other evolve. It is, as I have said to you previously, I have sent you nothing but angels. If you felt that you would significantly shorten the evolutionary process of an entire species, that is, of billions, by allowing yourself to exit your physical body at a certain time, in a certain way, would you do it? Don't think about your answer at the level of mind. Think about it at the level of soul.
When I think about it at the level of soul, I realize that my existence cannot be threatened, and my life cannot and will not end. So to simply change the form of my existence from the physical to the metaphysical, especially knowing that I can change it back whenever I wish, and that by doing that, billions would move forward in their evolutionary process, that would make it a very easy decision. I would see it as what I called earlier a burning building moment, when you rush in and save the baby and your own physical survival is not even part of your thought process, not part of the equation. I would make whatever choice brings the greatest benefit to the largest number of my fellow sentient beings.
Of course you would, because that's who you are. I want to tell you again that love is who you all are. It is because of this that you would actually forgive the person or group appearing to be the cause of your death, because you would realize that at the conscious level, they did not even know what they were doing. Then, when you move to total awareness in the realm of pure being, if it does not happen before, you would abandon any need to forgive them, because forgiveness would be replaced with understanding. You would comprehend completely how a sentient being could or would do such a thing.
You have told me in the past that understanding replaces forgiveness in the mind of the master.
And so it does. All of these things would be experienced by you precisely because you are made up of the energy you call love, personified and magnified in the free will choices and decisions that you make, the understandings that you embrace, and the expressions of self that you place into the ongoing and simultaneous creation within the ultimate reality. You do not have to wait until you find yourself in the realm of pure being. This awareness may be embraced by you at any time. The continued expansion of your awareness is what evolution is all about.
Now that is an awakened perspective if I've ever heard one. But I will confess to you, there are certain points this week where I'm like, I want to hear the awakened perspective. I want to be mad. Or I want to be sad, or I want to be frustrated right now, I think as long as we don't stay there, we'll be fine, and it's okay to feel that, and okay to feel whatever we want to feel, Hold on one moment. So now I'll share my story, and I have never shared this publicly before, although I have had some people reach out to me about discrimination or experiencing racism and asking for my input on their experience. I have had that happen from time to time, and as I go along, I'll share some of that with you too. But my story is very, very unique. Yeah, Charmaine, I agree. It is definitely okay to have those human moments. And Dolores, yes, thank you. Glad it was helpful. And that clip that I just shared, I wanted to begin with that in mind as I share my own story, because I'm going to go right back to that once I'm done with my story. Even if my story, if I get emotional during my story or whatever, I go right back to everything that was shared there. I know there is no death. And I know that the beautiful, eternal, indestructible soul that played the role of George Floyd, it was very clear that it was to bring about what is happening now, the uprising of compassion, the incredible awareness of injustice, and how everyone is just coming together over it, It's sad that humanity is in the place of our evolution where tragedy is required to evolve. I wish we could get to the place where we could joyfully evolve from good things happening, you know, but evidently we're not there yet. So we will evolve however we choose to evolve. So that's kind of how we're choosing to evolve right now, through pain and suffering. And unfortunately, tragedy, pain, and suffering is how we wake the fuck up. Unfortunately, I wish it were different. I wish we were in a different place in our evolution, and I know that we'll get to a different place in our evolution once all these wounds are brought to the surface and healed, and we choose a different way to live. I mean, this happened in the U.S., but the whole world is rallying. The whole world is rallying around this unfortunate circumstance. And I'm pretty sure that that was not an unintentional outcome. You know, from an awakened perspective, I'm very much aware that our souls play roles when we're here, and that once we're done playing the role, you know, we each have our own roles to play while we're here. And we'll talk about our roles, you know. Gia is saying yes, but how long is it going to take? You know, it's interesting. That's up to us. That's up to us. But let me go into my story. Hang on. We have to include the beautiful soul of the cop that killed. Yes, yes. And whoo, I just got full body chills, because one of the things that I talked about here, I'll weave that into my story. I'll weave that into my story. Because that cop that did that wasn't born that way. If he's racist, he wasn't born racist. When his soul entered this planet, didn't enter with anger and discriminatory tendencies. His soul didn't enter this body, his body, in human form with that, right? That's really good to keep in mind. But let me share my story. As you all know, I was born and raised in Trinidad and Tobago. I was born in 1965. I'm going to be 55 years old this year. I came to this country when I was 19 years old. When I was growing up, there was no TV. I grew up in a tiny little 2,000 square mile island. I was oblivious to the United States, like oblivious, okay? Sometimes when I talk to Americans, they seem to think that we are learning about their country. No, I'm a citizen, but when I was growing up, we weren't thinking about the US and what's going on in the US, and there was no TV. My world consists, like when I was growing up, my entire world consists of what was happening on my tiny little street, on my tiny little island, which wasn't much. So I kind of grew up in a box. I wasn't aware of what was happening in the US. I was not aware of this country's history. My entire 19 years of my life, I was completely oblivious to discrimination, racism, and all of that. When I tell you 100% oblivious, I truly do mean 100% oblivious, okay? Did I hear about Martin Luther King? Maybe a whisper somewhere off in the distance, you know? When I was growing up, when I went to school, I learned Trinidad and Tobago history. I didn't learn American history. Maybe there was a paragraph or two somewhere in my growing up years, but I didn't, that was not, clueless, completely clueless, okay? For my entire 19 years of life. And then I decided to immigrate to the United States. What was ingrained within me was, when you get to America, you could do whatever you want. You could accomplish whatever you want, fulfill your dreams. Right? That was the conditioning that I had regarding coming to this country. Where I grew up, when I was growing up, it's a lot different now. There's TV, all of the TV American channels are being streamed to Trinidad now. When I was growing up, A, we didn't have a TV. B, we had nothing to do with the US. So we didn't have any of the Netflix channels and movies and blah, blah, blah. There was nothing. There was none of that, right? So I wasn't exposed to anything. I was a clean, naive, 100% naive slate, okay? When I was growing up, my entire country was Black. Black wasn't a thing. If somebody did you wrong, you better find another reason because your color ain't it, because everybody Black. So in my household, there was never any talk about being Black. In my community, there was never any talk about being Black. Everybody's Black, right? There's never talk of discrimination. Everybody Black. There's never talk about racism. Everybody Black. You know what I mean? I might have noticed a Chinese person here or there. Usually they own a store, right? I don't think I ever saw a white person growing up in my 19 years of life on that planet. Everybody Black. So I never was conditioned with any of what the American history is with regard to racism and discrimination. So with my happy-go-lucky self, America's where you go to achieve your dreams. I hop on a plane to go live with my dad in Boston, Massachusetts. So naive that I didn't realize I was living in the inner city. Didn't even know what the inner city was until my dad said, you know, we're living in a very dangerous part of town. And I'm like, what does danger mean? Like, I grew up with no crime, no fear of crime. Look, complete slate, clean slate, naive. I was so naive when I came to this country. My dad said, we live in a very dangerous. I was like, what does that mean? Like, what was, I like oblivious, okay? Where I lived with my dad, everybody was Black, or people in the city anyway, predominantly Black city, which didn't strike me as odd. I grew up in a Black nation. Everybody was Black. I landed in a place in America where everybody's Black. Didn't even register. And then I joined this church right down the street from my house and joined a choir. And after choir rehearsal one day, we went out for pizza. The whole choir went out for pizza, went to a pizza parlor, everybody sitting down eating pizza. And then people just started talking about their lives, you know, what's going on, whatever. I didn't have a job at that time. I think I was going to secretarial school or something. I don't know what I was doing. Technology, something. I can't remember what I was doing, but I wasn't working at that time. So here I am with all of my friends. They're, you know, laughing and talking and doing all these different things. Gia's gonna love pizza, girl. I'm making so much pizza right now. It's not funny, which is why I really need to work out. But we're sitting down eating pizza, you know, we just had choir rehearsal, whatever. And people started talking about their jobs, you know, having interesting conversations about their jobs or whatever. And then people started talking about challenges on their jobs. And that was when I woke the hell up. Because people started talking about their challenges or whatever. And suddenly I noticed every time someone talked about a challenge, discrimination would come in. Racism would come in. On the outside, I was chowing down on my pizza. On the inside, I was like, what the hell is going on? Why is everybody, what's happening? Coming from a country where if somebody did you wrong, they're a jerk or some other reason, you know? And suddenly this was the theme of conversation and I didn't know what to do with that. Blank slate, completely naive, completely oblivious of the country I just came into and the history and completely oblivious, okay? And I'm realizing what's going on. Like I didn't let it on, like I'm eating my pizza, chum, chum, chum. But inside I was like, what's happening? Why is everybody talking like that? Why is discrimination keep coming up? Like what is going on? I don't understand. Oh, being Black is a thing here. Oh, I don't know anything about that. Like, I was like, boom, like, where did I just land? What's going on? Why is the color of your skin such an issue? Whoa. Like, I was completely blindsided, okay? And so I got a job. I only had 2 jobs here in corporate America and in the US. I had one at a publishing company and another at an engineering company. And those are the only 2 working experiences that I had. When I first caught on that there was, I was like, Black is a thing here. There's a whole nother conversation. There was this realization when I went home, something's very different about me versus what my friends are experiencing. I didn't understand it because remember, grew up in a box, don't know the history of this country, no clue about racism and discrimination. Like I was a really naive 19-year-old, okay? I remember going home going, I don't understand why they're talking. I just don't get it. Like I was trying to come to grips with what am I missing here because I don't understand why this is such a theme in conversations. Why is discrimination such a theme? I'm like, I don't get it. I just don't get it. And I have to confess to you, until I had a spiritual awakening, I still didn't get it. But I went to, it's like as I was understanding the history of this country, I got it intellectually. But it was clear to me, continuing to hang out with my friends, that they each had a history that I didn't have. They grew up in homes where every single day, their mother, their dad, their brother, uncle, aunt, grandmother, whatever, had a story to tell about racism and discrimination. That was embedded in their psyche, expectations. It was a generational imprint on everyone that were my friends. And it was very clear to me. Now, I can articulate it that way now because I understand it. But back then, all I knew was I was very different. And I didn't have what was going on with each of my friends. And it was like, I wanted to fit in and have the same kinds of conversations, but I had no history. I had no history. I didn't have their history. I didn't have their experiences. I didn't have all the stories that built up over time in their lives that caused them to have the different reactions and things in that way. And so the way that I handled it was just to accept that I'm different. I don't have that history. I understand it and I can see there's tremendous pain and I can see that there's tremendous, a very strong expectation of discrimination and a very strong aura of pain. And it ran deep, really deep. And I didn't know what to do with that. Naive little 19-year-old, I didn't know what to do with that. And so for the most part, I just decided I don't have what they have, and I don't have the history, and I don't have the stories. So I can't have the perspectives because I don't. And now, in my awakened state, being very much aware that this is a vibrational universe, I understand why it felt so different to me. Went into corporate America, but remember, my only conditioning, now African Americans who grew up in that kind of culture and all of those experiences from your family members every freaking day, and having that vibe of expectation of discrimination, expectation of being treated differently, and expectation of being treated less than, expectation of being held back. I had none of it. Wasn't conditioned. I didn't have the conditioning. I went into corporate America. The only conditioning I had was, you're in America, you get to do whatever you want, you could choose your path and blah, 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 you'll succeed, right? That's the only conditioning I had, right? I understood as I got to become more aware of the history of this country. I was like, oh. And as I hung out with my friends and they were retelling stories of their family members, yeah, that happened to my brother. He, da, 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 da. My sister had the same thing happen at her job. Da, 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 da. I'm like, oh, this is like, these stories are embedded. I don't have those stories. So I go into corporate America. My only conditioning is you can be whatever you want, da, 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 right? And so I never had the experience. I've been in this country for 35 years. I've never felt discriminated against. I've never had a racist story. I personally experienced. And for many years, I didn't understand, why am I not having that? Now I understand that I didn't have the conditioning and the vibrational. There's a vibration that you carry. It's kind of like, I don't know what transgender people are experiencing for discrimination. I don't know. I'm not in their world. I don't have their stories. I don't know. And what they expect when they go out into the world because of the many stories they've experienced is very different than I would experience going out into the world. I don't have that. I don't have the history. I don't know. I don't have it. Okay. So when I went into the workplace, I didn't have that at play. I didn't know how to look for it. It wasn't a default thought for me. I never had the thought of discrimination. I never had the thought, like literally never had the thought, because it wasn't in my conditioning. And even though I was hearing my friends talk about it, that imprint didn't seep into me. Now, my sister and I grew up in the very same home. She lives here in Georgia. A lot, well, I should say, some of that imprinting has seeped into her. And I could tell from the way she speaks. And I can tell from the conversations we've had. For whatever reason, the imprint didn't seep into me. The energy didn't seep into me. The expectations didn't seep into me. I was aware that it was happening, but it didn't seep into my aura. It didn't seep into my energetic field. It didn't seep into my expectations. I didn't have the imprint. So as I went into corporate America, none of that was at play. I never had the stories told to me as I was growing up. I never had the expectations. I never adopted the expectations either. I don't know why. I just never did. And so as I went into corporate America, I had a different expectation. When I walked into the boardroom at work, I never had the thought that I was Black. Like, it never entered my mind. Because I grew up with it never entering my mind. Everyone was Black. It was never a topic of conversation. And so as I made my way through corporate America, rolling through the ranks, I was continuously being promoted. I never felt held back. I never felt like I had to struggle. I never felt like it was hard to get ahead. I was always getting promoted, always. Like my corporate life had very little drama. I didn't butt heads with anyone. I was just like, but the conditioning that I was coming into it with, you're in America. You can do whatever you want. And that's the only conditioning that I had. I was aware of other things happening, but for whatever reason, the imprinting did not seep into my energetic field. I can describe it now, but for the many years in corporate America, I couldn't describe it. I would have conversations with my friends and I'd be like, I'm still not experiencing this. I don't understand. And I would keep my mouth shut because there was very strong energy with regard to discrimination. And I didn't want to say, that's never happened to me, but it's never happened to me. Now I understand it from an energetic perspective. I didn't understand it back then. In my job, I kept getting promoted. One day, my HR department said, Allison, there's a magazine that wants to do a story on you. And I'm like, okay, whatever. I was like, about what? They're like, oh, about your success and whatever. I'm like, oh, okay, no problem. So the magazine comes into my job I didn't realize that it was a diversity magazine. Clueless. Okay. And the interviewer, a woman, is sitting down with me to do this interview for the magazine. And I didn't realize until the person sitting in front of me got there that it had to do with the fact that I was Black. It just completely oblivious. I thought it was like an industry magazine for our industry in the software field. I didn't even know. I didn't realize. And she was asking a bunch of different questions, whatever. And then she got to the question of, so can you share with us your story of how you've overcome the many challenges that African Americans face in the corporate world, and especially you being a woman of color? Could you share some of how you overcame some of the challenges? And I was like, crickets. And I was like, I didn't have an answer. And I realized in that moment how, I mean, even magazines expect you to struggle. And there is such a powerful expectation of struggle and a powerful, I think the answer that I gave was, well, I don't normally think about that. I really just focus on, I just turned it around because I didn't have an answer. And I went home that day and I realized, I remember sitting, eating dinner, and I was going, that's why sometimes Black people tell me I'm not quote unquote Black enough. And I've heard that from some of my friends, and I never understood what that meant. A lot of times people say, well, you sound white and you have a white name, you know. Now I just laugh and joke about it. I'm like, yep, I have 3 accents. I have Trinidadian, Black, and white. How about that? But people have told me that over time, and there were moments in my life here where I felt like I wasn't Black enough, like I didn't have the stories to tell. And I didn't have the stories of discrimination, and I didn't have the stories of racism, and I feel like I needed to have that. And if you didn't have that, then you failed the Black test. You know what I mean? You failed as a Black person, you're not struggling. You know what I mean? Because there's this heavy expectation of struggle. And we all know, as spiritually awakened souls, what you expect. And no fault to the folks that are experiencing that in our country, because this is the history. You know, if you grew up in an abusive household, you will have a very different experience out in the world than someone who's growing up in a happy household. You know what I mean? If you grew up in a household that's predominantly wealthy, you have an expectation of wealth. You're like, money will always be there. You don't look for struggle. You're like, money's always going to be there. And if you grew up in a household that's predominantly poor, then you have some shit to overcome when you get it, when you grow up, because you expect to work hard for money. You expect money's going to run out. You expect, you expect struggle with regard to money. And it's no different with my experience here. I lived with my upbringing, my Trinidadian upbringing, even though I was living in the US. I didn't live with the predominant expectation of pain, struggle, and discrimination that is pretty predominant in the African American community. I remember also going to a friend of mine. She was a very wealthy African American woman who went to the same church that I went to, and she used to help babysit my kids and all of that. And she invited me over to dinner one day, and we were just having dinner conversation. And she said, so how many Black people are at your company? Another moment where I'm like, I'm supposed to know this and I don't. I literally was not aware. Because again, when I walk into work, I'm not thinking I'm Black. I'm like, I'm one of y'all. You know, I'm a human. You know what I mean? There was no separation in my head because I wasn't raised with that. And I didn't know how to, I didn't move through life with that. I didn't notice that I was the only Black person in the office if I was. Never crossed my mind. Never crossed my mind. When other Black people came to work there, I wasn't counting, you know? And I remember my friend, I was like, I don't know. And my friend looked at me with shock and horror. You don't know how many Black people work at your company? And I'm like, oh God, there I am again, failing the Black test. I'm failing the Black test. I'm failing the Black test again. And I felt it was very heavy. And it was one of those moments where I went home again feeling like I could never be Black enough in this country. I just don't have the history. I just don't have it. That same girlfriend, the same night when we were at dinner, she said, look, I sit my kids down and I let them know when you grow up and you're done with school and you go out into the working world, here's what to expect. People are going to try to hold you back. People are going to, and she went down this list of things. And I had two sons and I was like, uh, I've never had those conversations with my children because all through their lives, I remind them, all through their lives, I remind them. And I'm like, I don't do that. And there was a part of me that was like, am I supposed to be preparing my children for that? I'm like, am I? But there's a disconnect for me because she was speaking experientially. What happened to her husband? What happened to her mother? What happened to her father? She can bring those stories into conversations with her children. I don't have any stories. I didn't have any of those experiences, right? About 3 years ago, I made friends with this beautiful Caucasian woman, and we became very close very fast. I met her at a meetup. She has since moved to Colorado, and we don't connect anymore. Um, but we became very close very fast, and we used to go for these long walks out in nature and have these deep spiritual conversations, really deep spiritual conversations. And we were sitting at this beautiful brook and we were having like just really deep conversation about spirituality and awakening, life as an awakened soul or whatever. And she stopped me and she looked at me and she said, I have something to share with you. And I said, yeah, sure, what? And she looked me dead in the eye and she said, you're the first Black person I've ever felt comfortable with. What? What? That was my response. I'm like, what? I was like, why? And she was like, I don't know if I could put it into words. It's just like, I don't know. I feel like whenever I try to make friends with African Americans, they're suspicious of me or they're angry. I just feel like they're very, very angry. And I was like, whoa. This conditioning is on both sides, and it runs deep. I'm sure she has an expectation that there's going to be anger or frustration there or suspicion there, right? And therefore, that's what she has experienced. There's conditioning on both sides. And that was another wake-up moment for me, like, what? I remember when I was with the guy that I was with in 2018, and I shared a little bit of this story with him. I don't know that I shared the whole story, but I shared enough to let him know that I don't got what you got, right? And he looked at me and he said, that's what it was. And I was like, what do you mean? He goes, when I met you, I went to your website and my thought was, this chick doesn't know she's Black. Because there was this openness about you and this just here to help the world thing about you that I don't see with other women that I've been with. And he goes, now I know what it is. don't have the conditioning. I could tell there was something different about you. The only people that I've actually shared this story with is people who have reached out to me, African Americans who have reached out to me. Because I've had people reach out to me. I remember when I was doing business coaching, people often used to reach out to me and say, how do you get white clients? Like, I can't get a single white person to hire me. How do you get white clients? What? Like, when someone becomes a client of mine, literally no thought of their color. Literally no thought of what color they are. It never crossed my mind. I didn't have an answer. I was like, that's not something I pay attention to in what I do in the world. It just isn't something I pay attention to. Someone reached out to me the other day and said, you shared your story of being in corporate America. How did you deal with the heavy sense of entitlement that white people have? And I shared this with her. And usually when I share this story with people, I never hear from them again. They're like, oh, you don't know what I'm experiencing, which is true. It's true. I haven't experienced it. On Wednesday of this week, my son and I were having a conversation about what was happening with George Floyd and what was happening with the demonstrations and things like that. And I suddenly started sharing this story with him. This is my 25-year-old son. And he listened very attentively, at the end of which he said, oh, that's why I've always felt different. He said, Mom, I don't have the conditioning either. You didn't ever give that to us. He said, all of my friends always tell me, how do you get white people to like you? And I was always puzzled by that. And I always felt different. I just now realized in you telling me that there's no talk of racism in our house. He said, Mom, I've never been afraid of cops. That's never crossed my mind. And he was arrested the other day. Stupid reason. Didn't pay a parking ticket, didn't go to court. They suspended his license. He was speeding. They caught him, threw him in jail. So he was reflecting on that. He goes, never once was I ever scared. The cop was really nice to me. Now I get it. You didn't have the conditioning, so you couldn't give that to us. And now I see why I'm different in that way. Now I get it. And I was like, I couldn't give you something I didn't have. I couldn't pass along to you generationally something that wasn't given to me generationally. Now I could have picked up the vibe. I could have picked up the pain. I could have picked up the oppression. I could have picked up all of that. I could have. And honestly, I don't know why I didn't. I don't know. I mean, I could have, I was hanging out in African-American circles all my life. I don't know why it never seeped into me. I don't know why. And because that vibration was never at play in me, I can say now, like when I was going through corporate America and realizing I'm not having the same experiences everybody else is having, I didn't know why. I didn't understand why. And there was a part of me that was like, I don't suck up to white people. It's like I don't do anything intentionally to be liked. You know what I mean? I don't do anything intentionally to be promoted either. Like my promotions in my job, I was always blindsided by them. Like I never strived to be promoted. I never intended to be promoted or try to get another job. Like none of that was ever at play for me. I was just in the energy of I'm in
to do whatever I want, you know? And I was like, here I am in America, and I'm doing like the corporate thing. How cool is that, you know? And that's the vibe that I was in the whole time. So I just never experienced it. The reason I share this is, even though I never experienced it personally, like I have no stories of discrimination to tell. I have no stories of racism to tell. I've never personally experienced racism, never, in my 35 years on this planet or in this country. I even tried to like go back and go, well, maybe the caveat that I say to people is maybe I was so freaking oblivious that I missed it. Maybe I just chalked it up to them being a jerk and they were being racist. I don't know. That's quite possible. That is quite possible. But I haven't had conflict in the workplace at all, really. I really haven't had conflict in the workplace. So I couldn't even like pull stories of conflict to analyze them to see if it might have been racism, you know what I mean? The only thing that came to my mind is in the first job that I was in, there was a time for promotion and everybody got promoted and I didn't. And the reason they gave me was that I didn't have a degree. Everybody else in the department had a degree and I didn't. That could have been, I don't know. But it's funny, everybody else, I was the only Black person in the department. And everyone else in the department was like, what? They didn't promote you? Like, what? Everybody was like mad for me. Me, I was like, oh, the game here is that you have to have a degree and I don't have a degree, so I'm just going to play the game somewhere else. I just left. And what's funny is that all of my coworkers like rallied for me. They're like, don't tell them you're leaving. It's fine. Use us as we're going to write recommendation letters for you. We're behind you. I think it's unfair. You know? But at the time, no thought of racism crossed my mind, like none. I was like, oh, the game here is you have to have a degree to get it. I don't have a degree, so I'm just gonna move to some place where what I do matters and the piece of paper doesn't matter. And I went to the other company where I spent the rest of my corporate career. So that could have been, I don't know, but the thought never crossed my mind. It just never crossed my mind. The reason I share my story and my journey is because if I am experiencing such inner pain as a result of what has happened, can you imagine what people who have truly faced discrimination and racism every single freaking day of their lives, what they're feeling? I had that thought, I'm like, y'all better be grateful that only Target's on fire, because human beings are very retaliatory. And if I'm getting mad at a cooking video, you know what I mean? It's like, can you imagine if I'm frustrated and it's never happened to me? If I'm feeling anger and it's never happened to me, can you imagine what people who have felt this in the workplace, at a grocery store, everywhere they go, have felt it? Even though I understand vibrational nature of what's at play, even though I understand the vibrational nature of it, I understand the generational thing, I understand that it's an imprint that was generational, I understand all of that. But my thought was, can you imagine what people who have lived this are feeling if I'm feeling all these tears crying every day and frustration and anger is rising up within me as A, an awakened soul, and B, never had that happen? I was like, y'all better be thankful that this whole country ain't on fire right now, because human beings, we are at a phase in our evolution right now where we can get pretty barbaric when we're angry. And not just in terms of this, but watch what we do when somebody hurts us in our family. How we react when a family member says something to us. We like, you know, we get very retaliatory. We get very animalistic. And I'm like, y'all better be grateful it's only Target on fire. Because if I'm feeling this, I just cannot imagine what people who have lived it every day are feeling. And now I'm going to shift into, let me just read some of your comments here. Oh, hang on. Just going to go back to some of your comments here. Oh, lots of wows. Wow, wow. Yeah, that was my son this week too. He's like, oh, wow. That I realized I saw like the engine spinning as he was watching me share this story. And at the end of it, when he said, wow, now I know why I don't feel what other people feel, because you didn't have it. And so you didn't have those experiences, so you couldn't give us those experiences either. And I see a lot of your wows. Yeah, you were just doing Allison. That's why it's so important for us to define who we are. Somebody was saying that they didn't have the experiences either. I have similar experiences on the white side, never heard about racism or heard of talk about race, grew up in a largely white neighborhood, but didn't have a white identity, didn't discover it until college. Yeah, that's interesting too, because somebody was mentioning earlier, don't forget the cop in all of this that committed this crime. And I was saying, no one's born that way, right? Just as oblivious as I was, because I was born in an entirely different country and was raised in an entirely different country, there are people in this country, if the color of their skin is not dark, they have no clue. They're oblivious. They're living in their own little world. You know what I mean? They don't have a vibe of discrimination, so they're just flowing through life, and they're like completely oblivious of what's going on. I was aware of what was going on, and I had a tremendous amount of compassion because I could tell that everything that my friends were saying came from a place of pain. And so there was plenty of compassion, like, wow, I can't, it's like talking to a friend that was emotionally abused in a relationship. And even though you have never been emotionally abused, hearing their story, you go, wow, God, I'm so sorry. That's kind of how I felt interacting with my friends, even though I didn't verbalize it. Was like, I was like, wow, they're coming from a place of a lot of pain. And I can tell they're coming from a place of a lot of pain. Okay, so a lot of wows. Somebody's saying Rebecca is saying that's why it's so important for us to define who we are. And going back to the cop who wasn't born with that. And a lot of this is coming to light as well in terms of how oblivious so many people are about what's happening. My son, who's 25, went to a performing arts school, and their school, I think somebody posted something that caused them to this week have a live stream about discrimination at the school, because I guess one of the students brought it up or whatever. And I overheard some of the conversation that they were having, because it's a largely African American school. It is so stunning that the teachers at the school were oblivious to how discriminated the students were feeling. And they were just now learning it in that live stream, in that Zoom broadcast. The director of the performing arts program collapsed in tears. What the students were sharing, they never considered. The experiences the students had, no one ever knew. And this was now coming to light. And this, when I saw that, when I heard the conversations that were happening, it was so clear to me the catalyst that this soul who played the role of George Floyd was. Unfortunately, we evolved through pain. That's where we are. In our barbaric evolution, we evolved through pain. But that listening, overhearing that conversation made me realize that that conversation is now being had in ways that it has never been had. And even though this is a tragedy, it is bringing things to light that has never been brought to light before and has never been talked about before. And we're gonna evolve because of it, because of the conversations that are now being had. There are a lot of oblivious people, a lot of people completely oblivious to what's at play and what others have been experiencing, because they're not in the shoes of the people that are having those experiences. And at a certain level, there are some intentionally racist people, I know that. But there's a lot of people who are so oblivious that they don't even realize that some of the things that they're saying is discriminatory and some of the things that they're doing is discriminatory. They're not even like my son gave me the example of the performing arts school. There was a teacher defending his not racist. The minute you go there, you know something's off. If you feel like you need to defend, something's off. But teacher showed up with a list of reasons why he's been fair or whatever. And one of the list of the reasons was whenever we have a show, because they cast, members for the different shows and dance rehearsals and, that kind of performing arts thing. And he was saying, look at all the shows that we've produced. There's an equal amount of opportunity. We cast people together. And my son said on the thing, he said, I noticed that you do cast people together. And that's true. You cast white people and black people together. When there's a love relationship, it's often cast with a black person and a white person or whatever. He goes, but what is the reason that you never cast a black person with a black person having a love relationship? Why do you have to put a white person in there? And the teacher was like, never even crossed his mind, right? His version of equality is always put black people with white people, right? And there's such oblivion at play that it has to come out, right? The wounds have to be exposed. And there's so much of that happening right now because of how oblivious, if the conversation wasn't had, that teacher would have just lived through his oblivion, not even recognizing that there was an opportunity to put two black people together in a love story. You know what I mean? So a lot of these conversations are coming to light, and as painful as it is, as frustrating as it is, as heart-wrenching as it is, we're going to evolve through it, and we're going to evolve past it. It has to happen. The evolution has to happen. Has to happen, Let me look at some of your other comments here. I feel like we take part in our own oppression in some ways, generation after generation, due to the continued limiting and lackful beliefs conditioned within us. And that's true. We must release that victim mindset in order to evolve. I'm multiracial, by the way, black dad, white, and Mexican mom. And that's true. It can be a tough road, or not tough, but just as oblivious as a Caucasian person may be to the day-to-day discrimination at play, African Americans are oblivious to the continuous stories being told. And the perspective is, I'm preparing my kids for the real world, as my girlfriend said, so it'll take some time, for people of color to let go of the old stories and embrace the new stories, create something different from the stories that are being told, because I think it is being seen as preparing our kids for the real world, there's a lot of fear that I couldn't pass on to my children. And I'm glad I didn't. I have no regrets about that, but I understand what's happening. I understand what's happening. My son is like, I got arrested. I was never afraid. The cop was really nice to me, actually, So, and he suddenly realized in sharing that, you've never talked to us about being afraid of cops. And it's not like I intended to not have the conversation, that it just never crossed my mind. I know this is happening. I know that there is police brutality happening. I am aware. It just never crossed my mind to sit my kids down and talk about that. And it's because it's not a part of my psyche. If it was a predominant part of my psyche, it would naturally come out of me. But because I don't have the history, and the historical imprint is not within me, I didn't even have the thought. And I said that to my son. I was like, it wasn't like I intended to not talk to you all about it. It just didn't play a role in my life in terms of my natural way of thinking and my natural thoughts about life. It just never entered. I know it was playing out in the real world. I know it, but it never entered my mind to sit my kids down and have a conversation with them about discrimination and racism. I've never, ever had conversations like that with my children. And some people would say, well, you're stupid. You should have them. Then when they go out in the real world, then they're going to, but I can't be who I'm not, and I can't embody what I'm not. And I understand. I understand that there are others having very different experiences. I understand it. And maybe my kids will grow up and they'll have similar experiences. I don't know. My 25-year-old, he's like, I think I'm kind of like you. I don't have the vibe. I don't have it in my, he was funny because he said, Mom, my friends have always said, how do you get white people to like you like that? Like in his career, since he left high school, he said, my Black friends would always say, how do you get white people to like you like that? What's going on there? What's going on there? And he just never thought about it, like me, oblivious, no conditioning. And because I didn't have the conditioning, I couldn't pass along that conditioning and that imprint of pain to him because I didn't have it, So it's just very, 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 very different. Stephanie is saying, your personality was probably too playful and therefore high vibrational for it to seep in, I guess. I don't know. I often think about that, and I was like, well, maybe it was just not part of my incarnation to have that happen. Maybe I'm part of the evolution, and telling this story helps people to see things in a different way. And so I had to live this story in order to tell this story, I don't know. I don't know why I never picked it up. And I think that's probably true because all my life I've been a very happy, upbeat, positive person, and whenever I encounter negativity, I try to understand it, but for whatever reason, it never seeps into me, even before my spiritual awakening. I have always been a very upbeat, happy, life's going to be really awesome, glass half full kind of person. So I think that may be true, is that even though and that's true of any challenge that I personally experienced, I feel it, I understand it, but I always see half full, glass half full kind of perspective on things. And so I think you're right. It's that I wasn't a vibrational match for it to seep into me. Even though I understood it, it wasn't, the imprinting couldn't make its way into my experience. I think that's probably true. Okay. Joanna saying, neither did I. I never had that convo with my sons either. Didn't feel the need. And I still don't feel the need. Like the conversation that I had with my kids was really just what's happening and what we're observing and different things that are happening, but no conversation of, and their dad never had that conversation with them either, even though they didn't grow up with him really. But that's not a conversation he's ever had. I mean, well, he grew up in Trinidad too, so he does have a little bit of that, not trying to get into the middle of American issues. You know, he has a little bit of that going on in terms of his perspective on things. And he does have a little bit of that fear of cops thing going on. But I can't say that it is as heavy as is typical for African Americans. So what I want to do next is really go into, so what do we do? Much like the live stream I had on the coronavirus. So here we are. This beautiful, eternal, indestructible soul decided to exit in the way that he did. And here we are, with the entire world paying attention, and the entire world having a conversation about equality and unity. And it's a beautiful thing, despite the tragedy that has occurred. You cannot deny the uprising of compassion. You cannot deny the uprising of awareness of what needs to change. We cannot deny that that's happening massively right now. And much like transcending the vibration of fear with COVID-19, we can feel what we need to feel, which is fine, and transcend it as well, and move into our innate ability to infuse this earth with light energy. So much like spreading light into our world with regard to COVID-19 and allowing the light to bring healing, it's no different with this, right? We can continuously, the interesting thing is that contraction is required for expansion. That's just where we are right now. As a civilization, in our civilization, contraction is required for expansion. However, if we stay in the contraction, we cannot expand. And so a lot of the history of this country and the conversations, just like, you know, Joanna saying, I never thought to have that conversation with my kids. But when we have conversations of discrimination with our kids from the place of preparing them for pain, preparing them for discrimination, preparing them for, you know, something bad is going to happen, we're staying in that contraction, right? I don't know that I agree that the conversation has to be had in order to help our children attract different experiences, right? Now, I'm coming from an awakened perspective. If you're not spiritually awakened, you're like, what are you talking about? You have to be in that spiritually awakened space to recognize that you can prepare, like I prepared my son to attract what he's attracting in his experience, which is no racism. And you know, it's interesting when I talked to him about that, he reflected on his life. He's 25. And he said, you know what, Mom, there was one ship that I went on, because he was a dancer, singer, actor on Carnival Cruise Lines for quite a while. And he said there was one ship that I went on where there was a lot of African Americans in that cast. And he said there was a lot of anger and animosity. And that expectation of being discriminated against and the experiences as well of being discriminated against and all of that. And he said, when I was there, I felt like something took over my body. It's so interesting to hear him use those words. I felt like something took over my body and I became frustrated. I felt the discrimination. I felt the racism. I felt it all. Because there was this swell of that there, is what he was saying to me. And he's had many other jobs aside from that. He said, now that I think about it, there hasn't been a single job that I've been in where I felt that, aside from that one time. And then that's when he was saying, my friends are always saying, how do you get like white people to like you? How do you get white people to like you, right? So he's having a very different experience too. Because the generational thing that I passed on to him was what was passed on to me, which is nothing. You know, I just didn't have it. Just couldn't have those conversations. Isn't it more powerful to prepare vibrationally for what's ahead rather than situationally? Because this is a vibrational universe. Even though we're having circumstances and situations and stories, they all have a vibrational basis. Whether we want to recognize that or not, they all have a vibrational basis because we live in a vibrational universe. Whether we choose to acknowledge that or not, we live in a vibrational universe. So as we move forward, let's go back to the Neil Donald Walsh beginning, right? That was the beginning of, I said, begin with the end in mind. That the soul that chose to move through that experience and be the catalyst for what's happening here is fine. He's doing all right. And what if we switch to connecting with the soul that's doing okay? I'm not saying forget what has happened. If you feel called to march, go ahead and march. My 25-year-old son is marching, peaceful marches. I don't see anything wrong with that. And there is such immense potency in our vibrational shift, even if one person shifts vibrationally. It's so potent, so potent. And my divine team has shared a lot of that with us in Conversations with Spirit in terms of our remembering our divinity. And those of you who are in Conversations with Spirit, a lot of what happened for me this week was along the lines of the meditation that we received in May, becoming more of our true selves, and the meditation that Spirit brought through there. And it's easy for me to transcend the feelings and the emotions that arise within me because I simply remember who I am. That I am a soul playing a human role. And so is everyone. And even though I can't fault people for burning down Target, I understand that. I understand the anger. I understand the frustration, for sure I do. Because I felt it and it's never happened to me. So I know, even though I don't personally know, I certainly understand the uprising of anger and frustration and pain. We can, as awakened souls, choose to be the vibration of love and light. And as we recall the story, release that and find the path to gratitude for the catalyst that is at play here. Not gratitude for the situation that occurred, not okay with the situation. I don't think any human being can be okay with the situation that occurred. But becoming aware of the catalyst at play and how much this is bringing, like the conversation that I overheard with my son's school was never had. And there are many conversations like that that are happening right now in ways that it's never had before. And so change is going to come, and evolution is going to come, and it'll never be fast enough. And there'll be somebody 2 months from now saying, it's still here, racism's still here. But as we hear these stories, can we choose to be the light beings that we are in the midst of it? Can we choose to be the love that we are in the midst of it? And as people are telling their stories and sharing their stories, may you feel love in the midst of this. May you feel acceptance in the midst of this, because anytime we look outside ourselves for love and acceptance and whatever to be okay, that'll always fail. Not even the, discrimination thing, just in general. Because there's a lot of people looking outside of themselves for love, acceptance, worthiness. Like, you can't get your worthiness from another human being. You might get something that looks like worthiness from another human being, but then you make them mad and they withdraw it. You know what I mean? So can we move into the place where we tap into our love, our worthiness, our sense of well-being from within? Because when we tap into that from within, there's a whole nother experience at play. And when we tap into that from within and we get it all from inside of us, not outside, then when we open our eyes, we see the world in a very different way. And we see that the vibration of love and worthiness that we feel from within, if we're walking around feeling 100% worthy within ourselves, 100% accepted within ourselves, 100% at peace within ourselves, if we garner that from within, not looking outside for it, but from within, and we just relish that from within and we feel it all from within, and we can go and connect with our higher selves and feel that love and feel that worthiness and feel that 100% acceptance for who we are, no matter what we do. And it's once we feel that, we don't even have to do a thing. Now, we can do a lot. We don't have to even do a thing. Because if we feel that, like really feel that from within, and it's 100, we feel 100% complete within ourselves, then wherever we go, we emanate that. And wherever we go, we emanate the vibration of that. I don't need worthiness from you, sir. Don't need acceptance from you, ma'am, boss lady, manager, director, vice president. When we don't need acceptance and worthiness from that person. Now, it doesn't mean we're saying, I'm just going to sit by and be mistreated by whoever in corporate America. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying if you step into the workplace and you feel 100% worthy, no matter what the hell they do, and you feel 100% acceptance within yourself because you know who you truly are, you don't have to speak a word. Everything around you shifts and changes because everything that you need came from within you. And because you are carrying the vibe of I am 100% complete, you walk into the workplace, you cannot help but magnetize to yourself a vibrational match to I am fucking complete. And I don't need a promotion to feel complete. And I don't need you to give me your attention for me to feel complete. And I don't need you to tell me that I'm worthy for me to feel worthy. I have that from within, sir. I have that from within, ma'am. right? And everything within your experience has to shift to match that vibration. And I know now that that was plenty of what was at play for me. Because when I walked into the workplace, I didn't have anything other than everything's fine, right? So the vibe that I walked into the workplace with was, I'm equal to all of y'all. But I wasn't thinking equality. I just embodied it. Because I didn't have anything else. I didn't have inequality in my vibe. I just expected everybody to be treated the same. And I didn't expect anybody to treat me differently. And I just expected to get promotions whenever they're there. And, there was this vibe of expecting that all is well as I move through the workplace. And so everything in my experience had to match that. Everything in my experience had to match that. And as awakened souls, back then, I didn't understand what was going on because I wasn't spiritually awakened. I didn't understand what vibration was, Yes, I had this high vibe of joy all the time. But I loved working with people, and I just loved helping people, and I loved my roles at work, and I just loved going to work. I never hated my job. I never got to the place where I hated my job. And I know a lot of people are there where they hate their job. That's a whole nother thing. But I loved what I did, and I loved that I got to work with people, and I loved that I got to be in America doing corporate America. There was this sense of fulfillment around that I enjoyed, and I just didn't have any expectation that drama would be at play. I just didn't have any of that. And so, but I didn't understand that is what was playing out. I didn't understand it. Now I know, right? And for those of you who might be in an experience where there's discrimination in the workplace and you are having all of these things at play, go within, go within, go within. I'm not saying ignore the things that are happening outside, but can we begin to address things? We're awakened, okay? This is a different conversation we're having here. Different, very different, okay? This is not a regular man on the street conversation. So if anybody clicks on this video and you're just a regular person, we're having a whole nother conversation here. We know that we are energetic beings, and whatever is predominantly at play in our energy is reflected back to us. Even the whole situation that's at play right now, you ask spirit what's happening, they're going, well, y'all have violence in your families. You all spew venom to your brothers and sisters and mother-in-laws and daughter-in-laws. Y'all are spewing venom to your own family members. Do you not expect that to be at play in your experience out into the world if it's happening inside of your homes? And so we also need to examine what's happening within. What's my relationship with my brother? I have to ask myself, right? What's my relationship with my mother, my aunt, my uncle, my sister-in-law, my brother-in-law? Because there's these venomous relationships that happen inside of our regular families. And we look outside and we go, why is all that happening out there? And if we look within, are we in harmony with everyone in our families? So that's another thing to look at vibrationally. Because what's happening in our little homes, right, on Smith Street is what is going to echo out into the world. I remember having a conversation with my divine team about wars, and they were like, first cease the wars that are happening within you, right? Hating yourselves, coming down on yourselves, and the wars within your family. You cease the wars within your family, it will never be reflected back to you in the world at large again, right? So there's a lot of things happening within our individual homes and relationships, right? The contentious relationships of spouses, the contentious relationships of in-laws, the contentious relationships as siblings, right? Where we try to, I'm not talking to her, she's just bringing my vibe down, And yes, you don't have to continue to connect with someone who is just venomous, you know. I'm not saying that, but you don't have to think about them in anger and frustration. You can think about them at the spirit level, like they're a spirit being having a human experience just like you. And this is what's playing out in their lives. It's kind of like thinking about the cop that committed this murder. He wasn't born that way. There's some conditioning in his life as well. Where the conditioning came from, I don't know. But we can choose to affect the world by what is happening in our families as well, and in our relationships. Our own personal relationships need to be harmonious in order for that to be reflected out into the world. And the conversations that we're having within our families must change in order, because if we're having continuous conversations about, you know, be fearful, you know, all these conversations that we can have, then we can't expect anything else to be at play, because that's a vibrational match to where we're at. You know, if we're like contentious and angry and frustrated and all these things are happening, and again, contraction is required before expansion. But we live in the contraction, which disallows the expansion. So go ahead, contract, feel the frustration, feel the anger, feel the pain, cry it out, be with whatever is arising. Nothing wrong with that. And realize that the contraction is at play for expansion to be birthed. And if we stay in the contraction, we're not allowing the expansion. And as quickly as we can, and I don't mean quickly like just let's play this out and just move past it. That's not what I mean. I mean, as it's playing out, find the vibrational resonance with what it was intended to do, which is bring all these things to light for what? Healing. Healing. We're moving into a new earth. This shit can't play out. You know what I mean? It has to be, the rawness of it has to come out for us to see it, for everyone to see it and experience it at a level that they've never experienced it before, in order for more compassion to be birthed, in order for more love to be birthed, unity to be birthed. But if we stay in the contraction, we're not allowing all of that to be birthed, right? And so as I see people marching, yes, there's unity there, and there's more marches that have the vibe of unity and love than anything. You know, yes, there's people looting and starting fires and doing all that. That has to play out, y'all. I'm not in the least bit surprised that that's playing out, because that's what humans do when humans get mad. They get barbaric and they get ugly. And yes, some of it is probably people infiltrating and trying to cause that to look like it's, you know, something that it's not. And I'm aware that that's probably happening as well. But as we feel the contraction, can we then release and breathe and welcome in the new things that are at play, envision the new conversations that are happening here, and the awareness that's expanding with regard to justice and unity and love and acceptance? Can we see how much that is in play right now? And can we focus our attention on that so that it expands? Yes, have you cry moments? I do, and I may have more. But can we then focus in on what we want to see expand? Because that's how potent we can be, right? We can, with our focus, like with just the focus on the possibility of the awareness expanding, the love expanding, the unity expanding, the appreciation of each other, no matter what color we are, expanding. If you just sit and contemplate that, like just contemplate the juiciness of that, contemplate the energy of that. If you just sit and contemplate that, turn the fucking TV off and contemplate something new. In your sitting and contemplating, like you just using your creator power, which is interesting because next Sunday, Spirit's coming in with a message about our innate creator power. Can't wait for that. But this is one of the things that they were sharing with me is if you sit in your creator power and use your thoughts, your mind, your vibration to resonate with the frequency of love and the frequency of acceptance, and see everyone accepting each other, and see that this is giving birth to a whole new world. Like this is being noticed in areas of the world that it may never have been noticed before. And what's happening in all areas of the world, giving birth to unity, seeing unity arising. And you just sit in the energy of that vision and the energy of people of all colors coming together. And there's a smile on their faces, and there's love in their hearts, and there's compassion arising, such that these experiences of brutality and lack of acceptance cannot any longer exist. When you sit in that vibration, you may think, well, now I have to get up and go do something about it, which is fine. If you feel like you need to go march, feel like you need to do something, that's fine. But realize, folks, when you are emanating that vibration, everywhere you go, it is felt. It is felt. You only have to utter a damn word. It is felt. It is felt. As you look at another person, if it's a white person, you just go, I see you having tremendous love and acceptance. I see you being an emanation of unity. You don't have to tell them anything. You don't have to say anything. If you're out in the marches, try that. March, but while you're marching, every person that walks by you, that you're seeing, whatever, just see them embracing unity in a whole new way. And as you are swimming in that energy, we don't understand until we're dead that when we have a vibrational frequency within us, it's impacting everyone around us. Everyone. The swell of that vibrational energy affects everyone that we come into contact with. Everyone that we come into contact with. A lot of times people tell me, I just love your energy, Allison. I just love your energy. They're feeling something. It's not my spoken word. Yes, I'm high energy, and yes, I like to talk, and yes, I tell stories, and yes, I'm a good storyteller, and all these things are true. But there's a vibrational energy that's felt, even if I never uttered a word. And that's true of every human being. For me, innately, I'm just joyful, high energy, and I just love that energy. I just love being in that energy. And people feel that. And people can feel you as well. You can let go of the imprint. You can let go of the generational imprint. If it were not possible, those words would never exit my mouth. So to anyone who's feeling that vibrational pain, who got that vibrational imprint from stories of your grandmother, your mother, your father, your brother, you can choose a different vibration. And when you do, you have a different experience. And I know it doesn't seem logical in your human experience to just change what's happening within you and expect something to change outside. But that's because we don't understand that we are vibrational beings. That's because we don't understand that we're energy beings. So we think doing is the only thing that we need to, that has an effect. We think doingness is the only thing that has an effect. But it isn't. And you can choose for that vibrational imprint to change. You can decide it ends with me. You can decide that. And when I say it ends with me, I don't mean you need to change who you are, you need to say something different. It's not any of that. It's that energy ends with me. I'm going to bring a new energy into my family. I'm going to bring a new energy into my conversations with others. I'm going to choose the vibration of unity in conversations with others. I can choose that. I have the power to choose that. And I'm not talking about just African American, but both sides, every color, every race. You can choose the vibration of unity. You can choose the vibration of love. Even though there's a vibrational imprint that feels hard to shake because you remember what happened to your mother and you remember that somebody spat on your brother. And whenever that comes up, you feel the tension, the pain, the sorrow. You can breathe and choose to let go and move into the vibration of unity. Yes, this did happen. It did. I choose unity. I choose love. I choose that to be my predominant vibration. Because if I don't, I know that I'm continuing to live in the contraction rather than allowing the birthing of the expansion. It's possible for everyone, not just me. Yes, I didn't grow up with it, so I don't have the imprint. But no matter what imprint you grew up with, everyone has the opportunity to affect change and to choose their own vibration, no matter what. And yes, some days it may feel hard, but you can choose your vibration. And when you do, everything that is a vibrational match to that shift will begin to occur in your experience. That I know for absolute certain. There's no doubt in my mind about that. We are so much more powerful vibrationally than we are in situations. And a lot of what happens for us when challenges occur and when something arises is we think, what are we going to do? Which is fine. We can do. We're doing. We're human doers. But we're also human beings. And I want to invite you, not just for this situation or circumstance, whatever's occurring in your life, whenever it arises, whatever crap arises, shit hits the fan, whatever, I don't care what it is. Whenever it arises, here's my invitation to you. Sit in stillness and say to yourself, how do I address this vibrationally first? Because then it becomes habitual for you to address it vibrationally first, which a lot of us don't do. Something arises and we go, what do I need to do? I need to call somebody. I need to. But give yourself some space. Whenever anything arises, money runs out of the bank account, somebody treats you poorly, I don't care what the situation is. Neighbors annoying you, somebody did you wrong somewhere, just go, all right. How do I address this vibrationally first? What would that look like? And what it looks like to address something vibrationally first is exactly what I described. You move in to the energy of what is desired. And you tell the story from that place rather than contemplating what didn't go right. So you move into the energy of where you'd like to be in this situation. You tell the story from that place in your quiet spot. Call it a meditation if you will. But in your quiet spot, you go, I'm going to address this vibrationally first. And you move into the energy of what is desired. And you tell the story of what is desired to yourself, not to anybody else. Because you have to experience it. So you tell the story to yourself in your quiet place. At the end of the day, just go there. Live it out. Because guess what you're doing? You're tapping into that vibrational reality. And that's where you want to end up anyway. So why would you want to contemplate anything else? How do I address this vibrationally first? And you won't be perfect at it. You're going to act out in your frustration. Right? We're going to do the human thing. We're here doing the human dance. But we each have the power to address things vibrationally first. We can in this situation. The world is changing as a result of this. Have you not noticed? I have. The world is changing. The world is changing, y'all, because of this. The world is changing because of this. And I don't know if it's going to change enough for us to feel satisfied just yet. But for damn sure, the world is changing. And you gotta be grateful for that and move into the energy of the change. You can stay in the story, or you can move into the energy of the change. And we can all do that. We all have the power to do that. We're all vibrational beings. Whatever we're emitting is affecting the world. I remember watching that near-death experience where the woman was saying she died, and when she saw, her spirit saw her life, she was saying she didn't realize that a cup of water that she offered someone in love rippled through the universe. A sentence that she uttered to someone with compassion was an energetic force that rippled throughout the universe. She didn't realize the universal effect of her personal actions and her personal vibrational shifts and her personal thoughts. We think it's only happening here. I had this experience and I reacted in this, right? In the human eye, the human self. But every action we take, and for damn sure every vibrational shift we experience, affects the whole planet. And we don't realize that until we're dead. But know that within yourself. Every thought and vibration I embody, if I continue to embody the imprint of what my grandmother felt, what my dad did, what my uncle felt, and the discrimination, if I can continue to embody that, I'm sending that into the universe. And if I choose to shift, and I choose to embody unity in the face of everything that's happening, I choose to change my vibration in the midst of it. That's also sending out a ripple effect of energy into this planet. And it only takes one person to choose to do that, let alone a whole bunch of people. Can we not feel the uprising of compassion that's happening right now? I can. This is here for us to shift. It's not only waking up white people who didn't understand what was at play. Maybe it's here to wake us up as African Americans as well. Maybe. To examine how we can shift too, right? Because it's a global shift. Everyone has to make a shift. It's not just one race that has to make a shift. Everyone has to make the shift. And it's a choice. It's a choice. We all have a choice. And we can address it vibrationally first. And when you're in that vibe of stepping into that reality and feeling it, because that aura will take over your being when you move into that reality. You won't feel pain. What you'll feel is joy. What you'll feel is, yes, this is where we're headed. And as you are there, if any actions arise, sure, take that. Because you're taking that action from a new vibration, a very different vibration, right?
We're all a part of this universe. And we each play a role in exactly how this universe plays out. Choose your role. Choose your vibrational role. We each get to do that. And I am complete. Okay, I'm going to go back to your comments here. Let's see. Jeff is saying, when George Floyd was killed, I felt the trauma deeply, and I withdrew and I stopped focusing on the pain and out of my energy into love. I feel so much love for the world as it is, and all beings in it, and all of their unique experiences. I feel this pervasive sense of perfection that I've never felt before. I want to put love more in everything, put more love out into everything. Yes. Stephanie is saying love wins. Yeah. And it's interesting that when we pass, the one thing that we know for sure is love is all that matters. Love is all that matters. And when we're here, we think everything else matters. Yeah, but not to diminish anything that's occurring right now, because everything is fine. Everything is exactly the way it should be. Everything is exactly the way it should be for the evolution to take place, and I know that to be true. I was on the bus to the grocery store, and the entire ride was feeling love for everyone on the bus and in the world. When I got off the bus with two men, we were crossing the street together, and a woman rode by on a bicycle and called out, "Hey, beautiful people, beautiful people, beautiful people." Such love being expressed by the world. Yeah, yeah. Can we move into that energy? Can we move into that? We're all bearing witness to the catalyst of the rebirth to a new world of compassionate community. Yeah. Yeah. Can we embody that? Knowing. Yeah. Tanya is saying, my 17-year-old daughter is choosing to march later today. I was a little uncomfortable with her going, but I have shifted my perspective thanks to this conversation. As always, the universe sends clarity at just the right time. Thank you, Allison. Love and light, beautiful kindred soul. Love and light to you as well. I'm glad it had a positive impact. And my 25-year-old son is going to be marching again today, and everyone is doing whatever they're here to do, and it's fine. It's totally fine. Well, that's all I wanted to share. And I hope this has some way impacted you and others. Because if you are impacted positively, then you impact everyone else that you are connected to in a positive way as well. And I hope each and every one of you go out into the world with the embodiment of love. And as you see each soul, send love. Become the light being that you are. And it's fine to move into your human energy as well, but we can also move into the light bodies that we are and just feel love. And beam that love. People react to you very differently when you're in a high energy place. I had a conversation with someone the other day. It was just a vendor. And I was, good luck to you. Gia's like, I'm hungry, I'm gonna go eat. I need to go eat too. But I was talking to a vendor, and it was something that was broken on my end. And because my energy is what it is, they commented, they're like, I've never talked to somebody who called to complain about something and they're so nice. And we can be that way in any circumstance. We limit our potential so much, but we're powerful. We're such powerful beings, such powerful beings. And my hope for each of you listening to this is that you move out into the world knowing your power, tapping into the reality that only you can tap into for yourself.
and knowing that when you tap into it, you will experience only that which is a vibrational match to the energy you choose to embody. All is well. All is well, beautiful souls. All is well. Well, I am complete, and I'm going to stop the recording at this time and just allow you all to go back into your lives and experience life in love and kindness and gentleness and compassion. And I know you all will. And when you do, everyone else does as well. Thank you for joining me, everyone. And thank you for sharing this space with me. Thank you for allowing me to share my story, which I've never shared before. And for being such vessels of love and light in all of what is happening in our world today. And I know you'll continue to be even more prominent vessels of love and light as you choose to address everything that is occurring vibrationally as well. Bye, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday, and I'll see you I'll see some of you next week, Sunday, for Spirit bringing through how we can become much more of our creator selves. Those of you who are interested in that, it's at AllisonPhillips.tv, Conversations with Spirit. I'll see you all for that live stream, which will probably be another couple of hours, but we're all set for now. Have a wonderful day, everyone. Bye.